You are now listening to the Invited Podcast with Cedric Harris and Tia McLean. You've officially been invited. Welcome to the Invited Podcast. Today we invite Stephen Austin, originally from Joliet, Illinois, but joining us currently from Kansas City, Missouri. Stephen Austin broke into the social media industry by using a combination of talent, skill, innovation, and creativity. He also has a dual degree in psychology and communication. And so he's worked with very, very large companies like Sky Vodka, Hershey's, Wendy's, and is currently the social media creative manager for Wingstop or Thigh Stop, as I've heard as of recently. And so I'm super excited to learn about Stephen's journey thus far and about the many projects and endeavors that he's working on. So Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And that was a great introduction. I was like, wow, have I done all these things?
Yes, you have. Yes, no, thank you so much. So I can't do you justice. I would love for you to share more about your background. So if you can just talk to us and our listeners about like your upbringing, maybe the type of student that you were, what were some of your interests? Just give us more background on Stephen Austin.
Yeah, so I'll start kind of where I was born and kind of when my life began, right? I'm born in El Paso, Texas, which throws a lot of people off. They're usually like, oh, if you grew up in the Chicago area, you're probably from there, which is not true. But the reason that is both my parents met in the Army. So kind of Army kid, moved around a lot, which I think to this day plays into a lot of why I am who I am. And so we lived there for a couple of years. Then I guess we went to Germany. I don't know. I was super young. And then from there went to North Carolina, which was interesting. And I lived there probably up until I think either fourth or fifth grade. And then we moved back to the Chicago area where my mom is originally from. So that's kind of where I spent most of my time. I would say at least from like late elementary and middle school and through high school. And when I'm actually going to freshman year, funny story, my mom was like, you're going to go take this honors class test. And I was like, why would I do that? Like, I just want to chill and be a normal student. Like, why put any more pressure on my life than need be?
Right.
And so I went and took the test anyway, because, your parents make you do whatever, even though you don't want to do it. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to go do it. And so I passed the test and I get put into mostly honors. And it was what it was at that time, because I had just planned to do what my parents both did, right? Like they both met in the Army. So I thought that was going to be my future. But, probably around my junior year, I fell in love with CSI. And I was just like, I want to be a forensic scientist.
Yes.
And clearly that's not what I do today. Like, at all. And I started looking into it. And that's kind of how Mizzou came about, because I was terrified that I was not going to get into any universities, just because I was first generation. Neither one of my parents had been to school. Actually, that's a lie. My mom went to college, but she went, in maybe her mid to late 20s. So kind of where I am now. And so I was like, oh, you don't really know like what it's like to go to college, like straight from high school, which she didn't, right? Like she went to the Army and then did all this other stuff, had a kid and raised them. So I also grew up in a household, where I would live with my mom, because my dad was, they were divorced. And so he was either, in, serving tours in Iraq, or he was in Germany at one point in time, or he lived in Texas, Tennessee. So it was kind of like this thing of neither one of them had that experience. So going to college was like this crazy culture shock to me. Obviously getting to meet great people like you and working with you over the course of years. But then I feel like I got to Mizzou and everything changed. Like I thought I knew what I wanted to do. I get three years into school and I was like, this is not it. Like, why did I think chemistry was the right thing to do? Luckily, like you mentioned, having that psychology degree there the whole time helped me kind of get through the process. But then I eventually switched to communications, which you mentioned, and really had no experience whatsoever until I got an internship. I want to say, the summer before I graduated, I got my first internship that I ever had in college. Most people who go to the journalism school at Mizzou are, light years ahead of me in terms of progress or just opportunities. So it was one of those things where I really had to work for it and show why I belonged. You had to do a bunch of projects, and I don't know, I spent probably like 20 hours working on this application, and that was amidst, applying to other places. And so I was terrified I wasn't going to get anything. And luckily, Barkley was the first place I worked here in Kansas City. They took a chance on me, which is funny now that I work for Wingstop, because after I interned, they ended up hiring me on right after graduation, which was 3 days after graduation. So most people, like, either they have something secured, in like November, or, let's say October, especially in the business school, or, maybe J school students have like multiple internships. So I was like, all right, I don't know what's going to happen, because I'm working for them part-time as I'm still at Mizzou.
Right.
And then they hired me on, and it was 3 days after graduation. So I'm freaking out, because I'm like, I'm not from Kansas City. I don't know anyone here. Like, what am I supposed to do? But I will back up 1 second, because I did miss a couple of things. You asked, like, what kind of student was I? Yeah. So being that kid that was new and first generation, I was a terrible student my first year. And I think that's okay, right? Like, I struggled. I was lucky to get the scholarship I did. I guess lucky, I earned it, but then I still got that scholarship. But, I had to maintain that after having a terrible first semester. How do you bounce back? And so I think I went through a lot of changes, and learning who I was, because you are raised, 18 years or maybe 17, I guess, because I was 17 when I started going to Mizzou, but you're raised by your upbringing. You have to really find who you are. And I think that year defined like who I was going to be, per se, because like you get hit with this thing where either you fail or you go home, or you rise to the challenge to succeed. So that's where it kind of changed for me. And then when I changed my major junior year to common psych, or to continue psych, that's when I started getting like 4.0s, which was like something I never thought I could do, because college was so hard. Yeah. One, I liked what I was doing. Two, I was just more focused. And that really has set me into the trajectory of where I am today, because I was like, I want to do the best work, or at least the best that I can. So with that led to me taking this internship and being really the only person in the whole group that had no experience. And out of that group, two of us got hired. One, she was an art director who also went to Mizzou, and she had like 2 or 3 previous internships. And then there was me, this dude who really never did anything and just worked in social media. And so what's so funny about that internship and the story, and kind of where like that lies where I am now, is I worked on a camping brand all summer. And then Hershey, which you also mentioned, I worked on the Take 5 candy bar brand. Relatively speaking, I didn't get to do anything besides like look at influencers for them. So like not a lot of experience. And then I worked on this camping brand. So I was like, all right, this cannot be like what I'm going to do. Right. Which then led to me eventually, when I got hired after the end of when I graduated, I got put on Wingstop and Russell Athletic. So that's kind of where I took my first pass at really being over a relatively large account, because I think at the time they had just opened their 1,000 store. Today they sit around like 1,500 plus, and they're a little bit international, like the UK. They're expanding to Canada here soon this year. So I got my first taste of the social media world. And then it's gone up and down from there. I'll kind of like put a break so that you can ask me anything, but I feel like I just went on a straight 10-minute speech of like how I became where I am now.
We love it. We love it.
That was helpful.
For sure. So as far as just the whole social media journey, I know you were talking about the different internships you were applying to and things like that. Was it all social media, or like what made you want to dive into the social media space overall?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when I was looking at everything and reading through it, 2 or 3 different areas stood out to me at the time. One was like strategist, because my psych emphasis was analytics. So a lot of what I was doing was just like number crunching, or just looking at stuff and analyzing it. So I was like, okay, this seems like strategy. But they kind of assigned you a role based on what you did, which was interesting. And so part of that project I did was a social media, like you had to write 3 tweets, you had to write a TV script. Like, so they kind of like tested where you were in the, I guess, in your creative process and where they thought you would fit. And so they kind of seeded me in social, which I guess was really interesting too. So a funny story with that is I got in trouble when I was probably like 12 or 11 for trying to hide that I had a MySpace. But I was also a kid who didn't have a phone until I was like in 9th grade, because my parents just refused to let me have a phone. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, this is super weird now looking back on it because I got in trouble because of social media, but now I work in it. And so I was like, this whole time, had you just let me get on there, I'd probably be even better at my job. But it is what it is, right? And then the other sector that I was looking at would have been account management, which really is a lot of people relationships. And that's one thing going back to it when I think on it, like moving around so much, you always have to, you have to get acclimated to your situation. You can either go two ways. You can be like, oh, I'm new here, and expect people to be like, oh, hey, like, and or you could just be like, all right, I'm new here. I just moved from like this place, and I'm just going to be here. And so I feel like I took the path of like finding my own way to just network with people every time I went somewhere, or and really just talking to a lot of people and getting a lot of different, I don't want to say cultures because it was mostly in the US, but you do pick up different things when you go to different regions because everywhere is not the same. And you probably know that from, going to the zoo, then going, state of Missouri, and then going to Texas, like totally different places. Although Dallas may be a cool spot, you're like, it's still Texas. Like there's things in there that are like Missouri, but probably a little different, right? So yeah, those are kind of the three little pillars that, or I guess categories that I was looking at in terms of positions. It would have been account management, strategy, and then social.
Mhm. I want to, I guess, like emphasize something that Steven said. So Steven was giving us like his background, his academic journey, and I just want to like reiterate how it's okay to be on one path and then realize it's not for you. It doesn't fit. It doesn't align with what you envision it to look like. And so it's okay to bounce back and to realize I actually want to do something different. I'm going to try to do something different like Steven did. So he realized chemistry was not it.
No,
I completely understand that. And it was
not
able
at
to
all.
find, something that fit him better. And now it seems like you absolutely love what you do.
Yeah. So I think that, you have these experiences that teach you a lot of things. And I think I learned a lot in such a short time frame. Once I kind of just like stopped trying to follow what I was supposed to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like there are people who, not saying I'm breaking rules and laws, but they do everything by the book. And I think that's okay. Because if everyone did everything the same way, we would all be the same, right? So you kind of have to find your way to do something. So yeah, I'm going to do the things that I need to do or that I should be doing. But one of those that a lot of actually, I got asked when I had an interview for a role last year, and so just to give a little bit of back story to it, I took a position at the end of what if that would have been let's say like October, November of 2019. And I was like, I was super excited for it. It was going to be like a director's role. It was at a small place, but I was super like, okay, I get to finally like just lead this thing and not kind of be led by someone else and then, do my work underneath them, which, cause a lot of the times, you don't get the credit you deserve because you're doing the work underneath somebody else, which is fine. Like we all have to do it to eventually, grow and level up and learn. But that led to 2020 and then, the pandemic. And so I got put on furlough. And that's kind of one of those things where you're like, what do I do from here? And so long story short, I work a couple of different random jobs that are in the social space. I did a strategist or, social media strategist for this healthcare company, which was not fun, but, I'm like, I got to pay the bills at this point. And
Right.
so don't keep doing it. But when I got interviewed for this really cool role, I was working for an influencer agency based out of Pasadena. So one, I was like, oh, I can wake up at 11 now because we don't have to be like online until 11. Like that's lit. And then I was like, this sucks because now I have to work till 7. So it was like there was some give and play, like give and take with it because you do get that flexibility, but then you have to work later. The one thing in the interview that stood out to me that I thought was a super interesting question is he's like looking over my resume and he's like, there's a lot of different things here. And so he's like, what do you actually want to do or what do you like? And I was like, well, there's 4 things I think if I had to put it into categories, which I hate doing this because I'm like, I'm a person, right? Like
Right.
I can do whatever I want, but also, I guess I can tell you 4 things. I was like, all right, if I could work in entertainment, whether that's movies and or TV, like that would be one. Music, like I love music and especially hip hop music. Like that's just what I've liked all my life, or I guess and R&B too. But if I could do something with music, that'd be cool. Sports would be another one. I like sports. I played them most of my life. I still try to actively go out and do something every, when it's safe, but every like week or so. And the last one was like, oh, gaming would be cool because that's something that I picked up, and I also did as kind of like a way to keep in touch with some of my close friends, because like I play with my friends sometimes who they live in, Chicago area. I have a friend that lives in California. I have a friend that lives in Florida. Right. So like, I don't see them all the time, but we talk just like how we're kind of having this conversation. So it was interesting because he's like, your background doesn't show many of these things. It seems like you just kind of hop around and you don't really know, like you don't have like that set defined path. But how we kind of talked about your path can look different. Well, I like came, and it was like hard for me because you're on a face call. And I'm like, I've never heard this before. So I'm like taking it back, like, all right, I want to be, because I'm pretty quick with responding and, but I was like, I need to process this. So I was like, okay, I asked a question to buy me some time so that I could then process my response. And I thought about it, and it may just be our generation, but I realized, the old way of doing things was to get one job and stay there for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Like we talked about, like that is perfectly okay. But I was like, I think the reason why I have so many roles and I've done so many things is I've learned what I need to learn. And I think I've gotten the most out of that role, and I've taken all that and gone somewhere else. And it's not that I'm disloyal, because that's kind of what he was hitting at. He was like, are you loyal? And I was like, no, I'm going to do my job. Like, I got you. Like, I promise you that whatever you put in front of me, I'm going to do it. But I look back I was looking at the resume at the same time. I was like, okay, I've worked, at this point, it would have been 5 different places in less than 3 years, which could be seen as a bad thing. But I was like, if you look and you actually paid attention, almost you like when you get that intro, you paid a lot of attention and you knew what you were talking about before you came to introduce me. So I was like, he wasn't doing that, right? Because he didn't see that each different thing was, okay, there was a promotion here. There was a title change here. There was this, and this. And so I was like, yeah, while it may look like I'm jumping all over the place, it's like, oh, I'm, instead of kind of staying in this place and waiting for somebody to make something happen, I'm going out there and doing it because I'm like, I think I can do this and make my own journey. And so I thought that was one of the most interesting questions, and it stuck with me. And that was only like, I guess it was less than a year ago, which is maybe why it's so fresh. But I was like, who asked someone that? Like, it's just like, it almost felt like, do you have stability issues type? That was the vibe I got from it. And in that moment, I'm like trying to keep straight face, like, no. But it was a great question. I think it helped me really, define who I was, because I was like, yeah, I've done a lot of stuff and I think I do a decent job at all of it. But I also don't think you have to be like, one person. Like I didn't even get one major in college because I couldn't figure it out. Right. I was like, shoot, I'm just going to do 2 things and that's what I'm going to do.
I feel that. And like all the different things you say, like you've had a lot of different roles, lots of different experiences, and now you're a Wingstop. Can you tell us more about that role as the social media creative manager and what all that entails and what are your like responsibilities like?
Yeah. So I started this role back in February, which kind of mentioned I worked for them before. I previously did just strictly community management, which I guess you could call it customer service is what a lot of people are familiar with it. But the way I like to really talk about it is community engagement. So you are responding to the people that are mentioning you. Now you have, a lot of things that go into social. There's a social media strategy, which I partially drive right now because my main role, at least when I was brought on, it's kind of shifted now, but was organic social. So nothing that costs money to do. Besides they pay me to sit here and figure this out, right? But a lot of it is, at least from my perspective, it's managing what we're posting, why we're posting it, when and where. All those things that, brands, they think about a lot, but you would be surprised how many brands just are like, to your point, I think you also made, Tia, like, we should just follow this. And it's like, no, why? We're our own brand. Like, if we're supposed to be our own brand, then why are we doing what everyone else is doing? So that's the like short and sweet version of what I do. But my role has evolved a little bit due to some shifts on my team. So now I kind of oversee and approve a lot of our influencer collaborations. So we work with a partner agency, but my role there is to help make sure that those people, they represent our audience, but they also represent our brand. They're not going to be, bad for us or bad for them. So that's the thing. But the channels that I help manage right now are Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I post on our YouTube, but we're not super active there. And that's it right now. We do want to expand it. And that's part of my role, right, is to kind of come on and figure out where they can go as a brand. And it's been awesome to kind of be back, because the first big thing that happened when I worked for them in 2017 was this rap battle with Wendy's. And so a lot of people were like, why are there two brands just like rapping on Twitter, which I thought it was hilarious. It just organically happened. It wasn't like we planned that. Like, I didn't even know the person, which I ended up going and working with that guy about a year after that happened. So that was super funny, really cool dude. And yeah, we worked together. But when I left, I was like, this brand is such a cool brand. And I think this is why I got, brought back on, is they had a really good grasp of culture, which I don't want to say I have the good grasp of culture, because I'm a good watch, listen, learn kind of person. I test things too. Some things are going to work, some things aren't. And so I think kind of after I left, it had its big peak, and then little wavy, and I came back, and they had just been struggling with it. And then, I got back, and now I think we're doing great. Like, people know the brand. They're doing, as you mentioned, Thigh Stop. We're doing different things, which that wasn't my idea. I do help execute it, and now that I mentioned that, I help run the Thigh Stop stuff too. So it's funny, but don't tell anyone. But I spend a lot of times talking to myself, because I have to tag another brand and then go on the other brand and then talk back to myself. So you can imagine I'm on a computer just switching tabs. And it's funny, I basically go like first person on one to first person on another, but that's part of my role, right? It's to understand social voices. And I do think, going back to that resume thing, having all those experiences really helps, because, I used to, some of the brands I don't necessarily talk about, but I worked on a turkey brand, right? Mm-hmm. I hate turkey. Like, I actively do not eat it on Thanksgiving. If it's turkey bacon or something mixed in, I might let it slide, or ground turkey, like on a taco, but it's just not for me, and that's okay. Yeah. But being able to not like something and still sell it is like what really comes down to, because with anything, you're not going to always love 100% of what you're doing. But if you can like or love a lot of it, you can deal with that little bit. And so I was like, well, I don't like anything about this, but I still was able to like work and sell that. And so I think that's a big part with the current brand. Wingstop had kind of gotten a little lost in terms of where, like, who they were. Mm-hmm. And they kind of had like this weird moment where they were like, oh, we forgot we were kind of a cool brand, or people really rock with us. Like, like I said, I worked on like about 12 brands this time, maybe a little more. And I've never seen some of the stuff I've seen on Wingstop messages. Like, I can't even share them because that's how bad they are. But you could probably look them up and see some of them, because it's wild.
What type of responsibility do you feel like being that guy posting things for such a popular brand? Like you say, I know sometimes you've seen some brands be a little corny. Some of them like can be a little controversial, but you bear a lot of that responsibility with what you post. Do you feel any of that? And if so, how do you like manage your feelings versus like when you post?
Yeah, I think because when I first started doing this, I was like, oh man, this is a lot of power. Like, you literally represent, if it's Facebook back then, they have over a million likes or followers. So you're like, I type these words and I press post, and then, so the very first time I had to tweet something, I was terrified. Yeah. And all I was doing was responding to one person, but like, you're just like, oh man. But it's so different than when you respond to someone on your own social media, because you're not even thinking about it. You're just like, oh, so-and-so said, that food I got looks good. And you're like, yeah, that shit was fire. Mm-hmm. But you're like, okay, I'm not me. I'm a brand. What would a brand say, right? So that's where a lot of that training and strategy, I guess, and tone and style and all that stuff kind of comes into play, because you are in charge of a lot of things, right? Like, I feel like someone who is, big in a company could, say something verbally, and it may take months before anything ever surfaces, or like, somebody could have predicted that 2020 was going to happen, but if it wasn't on social, it probably didn't happen. That's the good and bad about it, right? Like, you get instant feedback. If we put out a tweet, or if I think I'm funny and I put something out and it is not funny, I'm going to know within 5 minutes, because the analytical part of me, I'm looking at the performance. If we're getting 5 likes after 5 minutes, I'm crying on the inside, because I'm like, wow, that was terrible. Now, if we got like 105 minutes, I'm like, all right, we might have done something, right? So there's that. And that's why I think I like it so much, because working in, psychology and doing research and stuff, like, it takes time to do that. Like, that process takes kind of forever sometimes. It can take weeks, months before you even know what you want to put together. Whereas, like, you put a tweet out, you put an Instagram post, you put a TikTok, within a day, like, did people like that or did they not like it? But yeah, it is a lot of power, like you said, because we've seen, brands put the wrong thing out there and just get drugged by the internet. And I refuse to, and luckily I've never made that, I don't want to say mistake, but I've never been like just straight up drugged by anyone. I've had some people who would be like, oh, this isn't funny, or like whatever, but I'm like, that's cool. 95% of the people responding are like, this is dope, or this is funny, or this is cool. And I'm like, cool. But that's like everything in life. Everyone you meet doesn't have to like you, and that's okay. Or everything you do, not everyone's going to agree with, and that's also okay. And I think that's where sometimes, to your point, I think I learned probably about a month or two in to just separate the brand from me as a person, because these comments, yes, they come towards you and you read them, but they're not directed at you. They're like directed at the brand. And it takes a lot to understand that. Like, I know I've worked with some people who are just like, and they had to cover for me, and they're like, these people are me. And I was like, oh, they don't mean it. They just on Twitter saying something. Don't worry about it. Like, if you put out a terrible response, it's okay. As long as you didn't say anything like extremely problematic or irreversible, you're fine. Just don't even take it like they meant it, because they just were trying. And a lot of times I learned people just want attention, right?
They do.
So they'll say something to a brand because they don't think they forget there's a person on the other side of the screen. And so sometimes, I think with the brand I work on, we are more organic and just authentic. So like, when people say something, I'm gonna respond for the most part, and just because that's what this is for. It costs us nothing. It's free, and it's also part of our brand's persona to be there and be in the conversations. And then there's certain conversations that I see and I'm like, yeah, this isn't for us. I'm just gonna let that slide. But that might be a conversation that I want to see on my personal social. So I'll switch over and be like, okay, how's it going now? So that's kind of that difference.
Okay. So you have another restaurant that I want to ask you about.
Yeah.
So it's my last Wingstop question. Have you ever met Rick Ross?
Yes.
You have?
I met Rick Ross twice, actually. Okay. Once I met him, I went down, it was my first work trip ever, actually. I went down to Dallas, and I think it's called Gas Monkey Live. It's like a little venue down there. Close. Yeah. And he had it was right after he released the album. Oh, I wish I knew the name of it, but he's like in this kind of pink, or not pink, it's a purple like fur coat. And he's got a hat on.
I know exactly what you want to talk. I can see the cover in my head, but I can't think of the name of the album.
Yeah. So it was right when that one had came out. It's called Rather You Than Me. So that one had just came out, and it was my first trip, and we're backstage, we're prepping for him, and we're getting 350 lemon pepper wings, all flats. And he's like, I want 30 bottles of Bel Air, and I'm like, I don't even know what Bel Air is, because I just turned 21 like a year before that. So not even, I had just turned 21 it was about a year before that. So yeah, that was the first time I got a photo with him. I had like a stand on my shirt, and I was like, dang, man. But it was still like cool. I met him. And then last time, actually, the Thigh Stop commercial shoot, I was on set getting some behind the scenes content for our social channels. And I had on a cool, the Henry face mask, but it was like a Wingstop one. And I don't know if you remember me because it had been like 4 years since I had last seen him or whatever.
Right.
And he was like, "Hey, I want one of them masks." And I was like, "I'll see what we can do. It's a prototype." But then because I had the mask on, he probably didn't realize who I was. But then after like one of the sets, he was like, "So how can I get one of those?" And I put it down. And he was like, "Oh," he's like, "You're the dude that does the social, right?" So I was like, "Yeah, yeah." And so like didn't remember my name, but like remember who I was. And so anyways, we hooked him up with some masks and he posted them on his socials. So yeah, I met him twice. Really cool. And I think the funnest part about him is he's just so easygoing. Like everything we asked him to do during the photo shoot, and by we, I mean the directors, he was just like too easy. He was like, "I got it." And I was like, wow. Such a easy going dude.
Rick Ross seems like he's just super cool.
Rick Ross, the boss.
Right.
Literally the boss. Just be vibing, man. Like on it. Got to go to the place where they shot Coming to America too, the Promised Land. That was where we shot so yeah, I got to see it from the outside. We weren't allowed inside, unfortunately. I was like, want to get in. I just want to see it. I'll put my hands behind my back. You can put handcuffs on, whatever you need to do. I just want to walk around and look at it. But I understand it's his home. He didn't want people in his home. But I did get to see his pool out back, which is apparently one of the biggest private pools in the United States. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was crazy. So I still need to watch Coming to America too. I've just been too busy to do it, which is terrible. It's been out forever. But I'm like, now I've actually been there and seen it in real life. So when I watch it, I'll have just more of a frame of reference.
That's awesome. Very, very cool. And the other restaurant that I mentioned previously is KC Mac & Co. So Stephen, tell us a little bit more about that restaurant, how that came to be, and what you do with KC Mac & Co.
Yeah, so KC Mac & Co. is a really fun story, I think. My business partner, his name is Dwight. Last name is Tiller. He actually is I tell him he's the integral part to it, because as much as I can market everything and I'm pretty good at it, I was like, if we don't have no food, no menu, what am I selling? So the idea actually came from about 4 years ago when I first met him. He was just doing plates for the weekend, which is like kind of how a lot of smaller, I guess, independent chefs start what they're doing. And at the time, I think he was working at Aramark, which is where he was working at the Chiefs practice facility. So he was like, one of the people that was helping serve all the people. If you think about like Mizzou, how they have the, I can't think of what it's called, but they had their athletic facility where they had kind of the same thing where the players go and eat. So that was kind of what he was doing. And on the side, he was doing some private chef stuff. So one day he was doing this mac and cheese, and it was called Honey Serrano Chicken Macaroni. And I was like, well, I've never heard of this before, but I want to try it. So I paid for a plate, and he drove it to me and gave it to me at my old apartment. And all it cost me was $15. And I was like, okay, this is pretty reasonable for like delivery on macaroni. And I'm talking like a good portion. Like I was full once I finished it. So I was like, that's probably the best macaroni I've ever had in my life. And I had just met him. So he was like, you're just fooling around. And I was like, no, I'm serious, bro. Like, this is some good stuff. So about a year later, I come up with this idea of like, yo, we should make this a thing. And I'm like doing my research as I do, psychology, communication background, all coming back. Right. I'm like, they only have stuff like this in, LA or New York or these big cities where they serve one thing. It looks crazy. It looks good. And people like just want to go try it. Exactly. Here in Kansas City, we're a growing city, which is what I like about it the most, but we're not there yet in terms of like the super cool things. It's like, we've got some good stuff. They've got great barbecue. I can't lie. The barbecue is phenomenal, which I know people from Texas would do differently. Maybe not. You have to tell me what you think about that later. But I was like, bro, we've got to do something. And so he still wasn't on board until 2019. Mm-hmm. I gave him like 2 full years to sit on this. And he's like, all right, I think I'm in. So I said, if you say you're in, I will do all the paperwork, all the stuff to get us set up. I'm actually looking at some paperwork right now that I need to read because it came in today. I didn't know it was so much freaking paperwork to start a business. Like, it is kind of crazy. And I guess it's even more crazy in the food space because you're serving something to people. So there's a lot of certifications. There's a lot of permits, applications, like state ID tax numbers, tourism tax numbers. I'm like, I didn't even know these things existed. One, if I maybe was a business major, I would know this, but I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm learning as we go. So yeah, I handled that part of it. And I was like, anything in the kitchen, that is all you. You do your thing. I can be a taste tester, but I'm not going to tell you what should go where, and I can give ideas. But we kind of have this really good dynamic relationship where I do my thing in the marketing space, and then obviously all the back end stuff. And he does his thing in the kitchen. And that's kind of why I think it works so well. And we're like a perfect fit in terms of how we started the concept. But then also my girlfriend, Chloe, she does all of our design work from top to bottom because I'm not a designer. I'm the person that does the camera work. I do our social, I run it, similar to how I run all the other accounts that I work on. But I'm like, I can't design. So when it comes down to signs, T-shirts, name tags, things like that, like I was like, hey, can you help us? Because I know you want to do this. So really it was like a fun passion project that we started in the pandemic. We did a pop-up. So his parents own a food truck called These Nachos KC. And so he's been helping them with that for like, I want to say 3 or 4 years now. And they let us run out their food truck and serve. And so our first pop-up, we sold, it was over 100, it was 75 orders, but a lot of them were 2 or more things. So I think we sold about 180 pans of macaroni in our first like pop-up.
Yeah.
So that was in March, like April, right as the pandemic hit. Mm-hmm. So fast forward, we really don't know what to do because we wanted to host an event and do like a big tasting before we kind of came out. So the place that we're in now, it's called Parlor. There's something similar in Dallas that I actually went to a couple of weeks ago called Legacy Hall. I don't know if you've been there yet. Mm-hmm. So take that big, really cool concept with all those kitchens and then shrink it down because this is Missouri and not Texas. There's only 7 kitchens in there and there's two stores. No, it's actually 3 floors, but there's 2 bars. Okay. So similar concept, but a lot smaller. Probably like a 4th, if not an 8th of the size. Like it's crazy how small it is. So our little space, and so they basically posted they were looking for 2 new concepts. And so we sent them a message, I think it was on Facebook, like, hey, like, we're interested and here's what we have. And all we had at that time was Instagram with like 300 followers because we really hadn't done anything. Right. And they were like, we'd love to have you guys. And we're like, wait, what?
Say no more.
Yeah, I was like, okay, all right. So what's funny is I told them probably like also around the time we had come up with the idea, I was like, Parlor would be a great location because it's such a small place and you don't have to like worry about doing a full restaurant because if you do some research into how much a restaurant costs, it's really scary because they show you this like bottom level being like $100,000 and you're like, okay, who just has that sitting around? Who can get approved for that? And it's like, I just moved into this house that we built like in January. So I was like, yeah, there's no way we're going to start this business anytime soon. So we're thinking it's going to be 2022, 2023, like down the road. But they give us the pitch and we're like, okay, let's see what we can make happen. So we literally pulled this restaurant together, or this concept is what I call it, within 2 months because I emailed them or sent them that message like May 15th. We opened 10 days ago, July 16th. Wow. Yeah, so we had to pull together a final menu because you can't compete with the people in there. So some of the stuff we wanted to sell, we couldn't sell, which is fine. We changed our menu now, and I think our menu, the way it's built, is really good. But, I had to get onto the marketing stuff. I had to get all the paperwork filled out. We had to hire employees. So all of this is happening, getting our permits, getting the certifications, all of this is happening in the period of May 15th to July 16th, because we didn't even sign the lease officially until midway through June because we had to just make sure we had, the right insurance and all these things. Right. So yeah, that's how it started and came to be a thing. And successfully, like the first day we sold out of everything, which is like nice. Insane. Yeah. Everything was gone.
No, that's really, really crazy. And so just kind of hearing you talk about everything that you had to do because your background wasn't in business, like, did you have anybody to like give you advice or did you just kind of tackle that like on your own?
Yeah. So luckily his family went through the process to start their food truck. So they gave us a good resource here in Kansas City. It's the Kansas City small business. I forget exactly what they're called, but I like sent a long email. I was like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, but I want to do this. Here's my idea. Here's this. And so they gave me like, a list of things that I should apply for and what I would need. And so at the time, the way we had written the concept up was like, it was going to be a pop-up and we were going to, rent out venues and use them, which his parents were like, just use our food truck, we'll pay us whatever, the gas used while we're running it, or however much, I don't know, if something breaks while we're doing, like, just do that stuff and you can use it. So that was a lot easier for us. So the concept still stayed the same, but when we went to do this, there's a lot more things you have to apply for. And luckily the building that we're in, they have a list of things that you need. One, in order for them to allow you to come into the space. So I wasn't terribly far off, but there were some things that because they required them, we had to go get them. But yeah, between that small business center that helps small businesses in Kansas City, his parents just having general knowledge, and then the building and their kind of like policies, it really helped kind of tie it all together, so that we had the proper paperwork. Because that was the biggest thing. I was like, we're going in here. It's downtown. I don't want to say it's a predominantly white area, but it is. And I was like, we're going to be the only Black-owned business. And I was like, if anyone's going to get audited or looked at or double-checked, triple-checked, I was like, it's going to be us. So I was like, let's make sure that we do everything possible on this end right. Because like I say, it's not about how you get to your path, but there are certain things that you have to do. And this is definitely one of those where I was like, any paperwork needs to be done, I'm doing it. And some of these applications take like 6 hours. Why? I don't know. They just ask everything, and then you have to verify that you said the same thing that you said on page 1 that you're saying on page 27. And it's like, I'm not lying. I'm giving you all the information I have. I promise. Like, yeah. So without them and all those resources, I probably would have been lost, because if you, like you said, you don't have that background, where do you start?
Yeah, resources to everything, mentorship is everything, and apparently this food is everything. Can you tell us more about like what's on the menu, what different types of mac and cheese you all serve, and do you all sell anything besides mac and cheese?
Yeah, so our name, kind of like we discussed, is KC Mac and Co. So a lot of the menu is going to be macaroni, but the Inco, as we like said, is, I guess that's our ability to sell whatever else that isn't macaroni, but that's like kind of the main things. So the first item on our menu is the honey serrano mac, which is the one that I talked about. So we called that our signature mac. And we use this, it's a 6-cheese bechamel sauce. So it's a white cheese sauce. And these are all fancy terms that I learned from my friend Dwight, because I do not know these things. But that's a sauce that he's made uniquely with a bunch of ingredients that I can't tell, because one, I don't even know how to make it. Like, he showed me, but I was like, that's your thing. So it's that creamy, cheesy bechamel sauce that we then would put on top. There's going to be 3 to 4 pieces of chicken that are going to be twice fried. They're marinated in a buttermilk and buffalo mix. So a lot of people think it's going to be like buffalo chicken, and it's not. What I like about it so much is it's really, the chicken is just, it's kind of a juicy chicken that just sits on top. The part that really gets like good about this dish is there's a honey serrano glaze. So the pepper is not as spicy as a jalapeno, but it's not like, I don't know, like a green pepper, right? Like, it's got some kick to it. And so that is then diced up, or I guess sliced up, and then put over the top as like a garnish. So that's like the number one thing on our menu. That's the original macaroni too. And that, after a week or so, is still our top selling mac. Followed by the cowboy mac, which is the same macaroni that we use, but instead it now has brisket. And that brisket is smoked by Dwight's dad, actually, who runs these nachos. So that's kind of where we have still a collaboration with them. They make the brisket for us. We put it in our macaroni. We top it with barbecue sauce and fried onions. They then have this is a crazy one. It's called the chicken waffle. So a lot of people think that we're serving chicken and waffles, but it's actually chicken in a macaroni waffle. So we take that same macaroni, put it into a waffle iron, we press it, and then it goes on the bottom as like your waffle, like it would with the chicken and waffle. Put the chicken on top, and then we have a sauce that goes with it. It's called S&S sauce. It's something sweet, something spicy. So sweet and spicy basically, but we just added extra words. And then that goes over the top and is our third top selling thing right now. So the way we wrote the menu is actually how everything's been selling, which is super weird because I thought that a lot of people would want to try our next item, which is the Just Mac. And it's just that signature macaroni served the way it is. And I think, and then we add panko breading to the top, and then it has a nice little garnish. And so all of this kind of comes with I won't say crusted, but you get that, like, it's not burnt, but it's like a toasted top. So you see the macaroni is like nice and cheesy underneath with a toasted cheese layer on top. So that's like the bulk of the macaroni section. But then we have a couple sides. One of them does have macaroni in it. The other one doesn't. So we have the co-wedges, which are potato wedges, and they're pretty big. They're probably about, I don't know, if you were to put your pointer finger out from the base of your palm. So pretty big wedges. They're like long potato wedges. And one of the reasons we have those is Dwight didn't like how KFC got rid of theirs, so he wanted to make his own. And so he made his own. And they come with a lot of seasoning and then cotija cheese over the top. And then they're served with this, it's called a green goddess dressing. So it's like kind of limey, but it has, or lemony, should I say, but it has kind of like a parsley and sour creamish taste to it. A lot of people like that. And then, and the other side is the mac fritter. And so the best way to describe it is if you think about a mozzarella stick, but instead of it being a long stick, it's in a circular form. Yeah. And when you bite into it or pull it apart or do whatever you choose, it's going to have that same, so we use a kava topping noodle, and that's what's going to be on the inside. And so instead of, just biting into straight cheese, you're getting a macaroni noodle that is the cheese and the same creamy sauce that we use in the rest of the menu. And the last thing, which is a big fan favorite, is the peach cobbler. So it's called the co-cobbler. Mm-hmm. Similar process. We mold it, and it's fried just like our fritters. And then we serve it with a scoop of ice cream. But it has a really nice crunch and crisp to it. Yeah. And the first day, everything on the menu was sold out. The second day, we could not sell a lot of the stuff because a lot of the sides, like the fritters, and the cobbler, take time to be prepped, and they need like 6 to 8 hours to sit. So we close at like 11 on, Friday. We have to open back up by 11. So unless we were just going to like stay up all night, there was just no time to do that. But yeah, since then, really, today's actually the day. Monday is our only day that we're not open. Okay. So we had a lot of time to restock. We get our order shipments in on Tuesdays. And so I think now we're going to try to double down and be prepared for the demand. But one of those things I was telling Dwight, I was like, I think what we're going to create with this is like give people something they didn't know that they needed. Yeah. And so then now there's a need that they never know that they wanted. And now we're here. So yeah, that's the menu in whole. And I think we're going to look at expanding some of this stuff potentially, but we want to this menu is doing great. So we're like, let it do its thing. We're going to try to keep everything stocked. And we really want to expand it because right now we don't even do our online ordering, and we don't have delivery yet. Like we just can't do it yet until we at least get some more staff. Because like I said, we have 3 people plus Dwight and I, so it's like a really small, nimble team.
Yeah.
And I see why you're the marketing man, because everything and the way you described it makes you want everything on the menu. So I might have to make a trip to Kansas City to get what I didn't know I needed.
Yeah, it's 100% worth it. And I try to tell people, like, they'll ask me, like, what should I get? And I ask them, do you like spice? If you like spice, definitely the first thing. If you don't like spice, try this or this. And a lot of the times, actually, somebody asks, she's like, do you guys have gluten-free? And I was like, unfortunately, we haven't gotten that far yet. I give her the really nice response, or I'm like, no, we don't. But maybe one day we will. But I was like, yeah. At this point, we don't need it. So she's like, all right, so tell me what's the best thing. And I started telling her. I barely get through the chicken part. She's like, let me get the honey serrano chicken. I said, all right, I'll ring that up for you.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And so, Stephen, I would love to talk more about KC Mac, but I have to ask you. So you mentioned that you're a homeowner. So yes. Not only are you a homeowner, you got your house built. So tell us about that process and give us some advice. So for 2 people who want to own a home one day, who want to give up on renting, like what were some of those steps that you took?
Yeah, I think similar to kind of what happened with Casey McInco, it was just timing. We initially looked for a townhouse because I think the pandemic really not, we love each other, but I was like, we both work from home. We don't leave this house. We
It's
have a
hard.
1 bedroom apartment. Like,
Yeah.
I was working in the bedroom because we had a little corner area, and then Chloe was working in the living room. So it was like I could sometimes hear her on calls. I would try to like schedule. That was like fine, but we were like, all right, we gotta either get a bigger apartment or find something. So we kept driving past this one area, and we really like these townhouses. And they always tell you don't judge a book by its cover. And I learned that day that this was definitely a true story because this house or this townhouse looked beautiful from the outside. We get inside, and I was like, oh, this is not like what I want at all. Or like the pictures were a little deceiving.
Yeah.
And being the first thing that I'm potentially going to end up buying, I'm going to be super picky because I'm like, all right, we have a really nice apartment, but I'm like, I don't want to leave this apartment just to get more space, and then we don't actually like what we're doing. So the guy that showed us was like, all right, and I guess he could kind of tell because even with the mask on, my face tells a lot. So I was kind of like,
He could see. Yeah.
so the biggest thing is he tried to sell us, and I love this guy. He's awesome, but he tried to sell us on this bedroom being a bedroom, but I'm looking at it like there's a closet and probably like, I don't know, I'll say 8 by 8, but it was small.
Yeah.
I was like, this is an office, but he was like, yeah, it's really a 2 bedroom, but we can sell it as 3 because of the closet. And I was like, the closet is small too. So yeah, tip number 1, don't get finessed. Like if it doesn't sound right, it's probably not right. So that threw me off from the beginning because that was the first thing I saw. I was like, this tiny room is not a bedroom. Because I'm like, if I want to have a guest bedroom, like I can't even get a queen in here. Like
Right.
I'd rather get a desk in here. So I was like, no. And then I think we went through it, and then we talked about the price. And they weren't really trying to like wiggle on the price at all. And I was like, it's been on the market for like 200 something days. Like apparently it's not selling, right?
Yeah.
Which is when you think you had that negotiating part, but they were not folding. So I was like, yeah, I'm cool on it. But in that moment, I think he saw our faces and he's like, oh, I kind of think I got a grasp for your style or whatever. So let's go over to this neighborhood.
Okay.
So he brings us over to the neighborhood where we live now, and shows us one of the houses, one that's actually already done. And as soon as we walk in, I'm looking at this house like, wow, this is nice. Like, this is really, and part of me, I'll say I'm bougie. I'll go on record for it. I just like new, modern, and I guess the technical term is contemporary things.
Yeah.
So almost every apartment I've lived at, when I lived at the Point in Columbia, I moved there into the new section, like only one person lived there before me. When I went to my first apartment here in Kansas City, we were the first tenants in that building. Like I just knew stuff, and that's just where I'm more comfortable with it.
I feel it.
So he shows us the first place, and we're like, wow, this is amazing. But then we realized that it's probably way too expensive. We can never afford it. So I was like, yeah, I don't know why you brought us here. So then he told us about these other houses that they were building literally like, I don't know, it's probably like 4 doors down. So right around the corner. And we walked through this one, and we actually liked this house more because it was smaller. And the other house had a huge living room. And I was like, yeah, now after living in this house, and this is another pro tip number 2,
okay,
furniture. Moving from a 1 bedroom to a 3 bedroom. When I tell you our house looked like an empty museum or a minimalist museum for the first 3 months, because you already got to do all the stuff you're paying for to move and pay for the house. And you're like, we have a bed in our bedroom. And, we ended up bringing our old couch, but then we sold it because we wanted to get a new one. And I'm like, yo, my office, and you can see behind me, it is still playing because 1, I don't know what I want to do with it yet, but 2, literally all I have in here right now is my standing desk. And then I just got a bookshelf probably like a month ago. Right. So yeah, it takes time. And I really understood, it made me kind of appreciate the things I had as I was growing up. Cause I was like, dang, I always had a bed, a bookshelf, all these things. Now I'm in my own house. Like, I feel like Will Smith on Fresh Prince when they left and he was just sitting there. I was like, dang, this is pretty sad. Because the first week we had, and once we sold our couch because we were trying to wait on our new one, we had a blow up couch for like 2 weeks. And I was like, this is terrible. But I was like, it's something.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we found out about this house, and the pricing was very similar to the townhouse. The time frame really aligned. And so then going into the building process, because of this being part of this development that's been going on for like 10 or 15 years, there's certain rules, and like we couldn't change a lot of the stuff on the outside or alter the inside, at least during the construction phase, because they had to build it per their regulations, which sounds complicated, but it was a lot more simple. I think that's tip number 3 is they make the process seem a lot more complicated than it is. They use a lot of terms, but they're, I can't even think of the word now, but I think it starts with the earnest. I think it's earnest money. It's like your first down payment.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a down payment. But the reason why I think they call it earnest is it's like a non-refundable payment. So like if you're really interested in doing this or going into it, like make sure you're like down to do it. But a lot of the things throughout the process, as I'm like going through the portal online and applying and getting pre-approved. That's the biggest thing too, is getting that pre-approval. Because once you have a pre-approval, that basically tells any realtor, any builder that this person or these people have enough money, I guess, or capital, or can make a payment on a house that is X amount of dollars.
Right.
So that once we didn't have that, but I knew we were going to be fine because I was like talking to my family. That's another resource. I was like, all right, I know how much your house was and I roughly know how much you make. So I'm trying to put I'm trying to like do the equation myself because I'm the analytical person on the back end. Like, all right, if they can afford this, we're here, we should be able to get it. But that was actually one of the things that was the easiest part, was getting the pre-approval, because we actually got approved for more than we needed, which was nice. But you never want to tell them that, tip number 4, because if you have any negotiating power, especially if it's not a brand new build, you can be like, oh, we got approved for, let's say it's 200,000. And the house that you're going for is, 180. You would say, oh, we got approved for 180. Like, you don't tell them anything above that, because they're going to try to get as much money out of you as they can. Right. But the nice thing with cars versus houses is, when you live in them, they build equity. Whereas that car, as soon as you buy that, like, you probably lost, if not 30%, 40%, as soon as you rode off the lot. Yeah. So all that was done in that process. But what we really like the most is we went through the first house and they did a really good job picking their trim and everything. And they told us, they're like, oh, yeah, when you build here, you get to pick, your wall colors, your floor, the carpet, if we wanted to, like our blinds, but we picked our light fixtures. We picked, our finishes in the bathroom. So like everything in the interior is like what we wanted to do. And I think that was another thing that was so cool, because, you live in a bunch of different places. And when you go to buy a used house, you kind of just buy where it's at, and you have to, like, I'm not a good visionary person, creative. That's not what I do. Although I'm a creative manager, I tell people what I want and then they make it, because I can't do it. Yeah. So that was the same thing. We went in and we had a consultation. It took us about 4 or 5 hours, but they're showing you different pieces of fabric or different floors, different finishes, and they have like showrooms, and you're walking through and you're picking it all out and you're like, okay, I want to do this, this, this. And so really seeing the house get built and finished, it was like, this is everything we've been talking about, or like putting together for like months, kind of coming together in one. And the process was pretty seamless in terms of them building us. Once we put our money down to reserve our lot, they started the construction. They started in August. I want to say about a week after my birthday, because it was kind of like my little birthday gift was signing the house, or the lot reservation. And then they finished in like December. So it took them about 4 months. And then we moved in or closed on the day, and it was actually Chloe's birthday. So we like timed it out weirdly, where we both like gave us, their birthday presents. So it was cool. And the closing process is also a lot easier, because basically what closing is, and everyone makes it sound super crazy, it's all the paperwork you're seeing throughout that whole process. Yeah. Physically, because it was all digital, especially during the pandemic, everything's like online and you have phone calls and stuff, but you really just go and sign all the papers that officially say like this home is being purchased by you. And then they like make a document that, you know, this house sale is public and X, Y, and Z. So closing sounds crazy. And I feel like a lot of people overcomplicate that. That's, I guess, tip 5 is if you can look up all the terms, because it's going to seem like it's something super wild, but really it's a really simple thing. But I feel like, you know, how people like talking all these high educated terms and like, I mean, just tell me the simple thing. And that's one thing that I appreciate. Actually, I was in Dallas a couple weeks ago, and Sean he's a certified financial planner. And I was asking him about something that I thought was complicated. And he explained it to me in like 30 seconds. And I was like, why do they do this? And that's a very similar thing with houses. I feel like a lot of the terms they could say in a much simpler way. But yeah, so from start to finish, it took 4 months. We had to decide within a month, which was kind of crazy because they were like, people are looking at this neighborhood because we're not that far from downtown. And it's in a nice area. So I was like, all right, let's do it. We're going to get this house. And then it really dawned on me when I started running numbers. I was like, 1-bedroom apartment. Yes, it had a balcony right next to the pool downtown. But I was like, we live 4 minutes away from downtown. We were getting 2 more bedrooms, 2 more bathrooms, a 2-car garage, and we're going to pay less? I was like, all right, I've been getting scammed for my entire life, but that's okay. I think after owning the house for about 6 months, I still would not take this decision back because it's been awesome. And the nice thing about a new build, for most of the stuff that kind of goes wonky in your first year, you can tell your management company or the project management company and the builder, and they come and fix it. So that's really nice. And I think there's also additional warranties you can buy. I'm not 100% sure on that because I'm still new to this, but that's been the nice part. And I would not take it back. I think, you know, having this extra space, it just allows us to do so much more. And it's cheaper than renting. And then you're actually paying towards something. But like I said, I'm not against people who rent because I probably wouldn't have made this jump had I not had a work from home job and the pandemic. Like I would have just never thought about it. I was like, oh, I want to live downtown in the apartment. And it's like, I still live downtown, not in the apartment. But a lot of times when some of my friends are doing something downtown, they're like, hey, you mind if I park right in front of your house? But yeah, it's cool. You can park here and then just Uber. Like it doesn't, the streets are free. Like they don't bother me, you know? And the best thing, I got a camera out front. So if something happens, I got it on camera. Like I got you. So.
Awesome. And so I'm gonna make you get a little bit mushy really quickly. So you mentioned Chloe, your girlfriend. Yeah. I know she's all over your social media page. So I want you to tell us a little bit about how you all met, and then just what it's like to like find your person. Like you were ready to move in with Chloe. So just tell us about how you met and what it's like to meet your person.
Yeah, I think how we met was actually through work. So super funny. So I guess everything really does go back to Wingstop. I'll give them all the credit. She's from Utah, and she's actually the second person I've ever met who's from the state of Utah.
Okay. I've never met anyone from the state of Utah. So
okay, so now I don't feel weird because I was like, bro, what? Like, who lives there? And so I'm thinking I'm crazy. I know it's the state. I'm not stupid. I know my 50 states, but I'm like, all right, it's the 37th, I guess, largest state. So it's not huge, but it's not tiny. It's not like Massachusetts, right? Or Rhode Island, I guess. Because I'm like, I've never met anyone from Rhode Island. But I'm just like, okay, Utah. So I'm like, is that like the almost California, but not California? And it kind of is because it's like, it's West Coast and it's right, it borders California, but it's not California. So she moved out here, which I thought was interesting because of the opportunity to work on the Wingstop account as an account manager. And at that time, the rap battle had just happened like 3 or 4 months before that. So like, she's like, oh, Wingstop is really cool. Mm-hmm. It's got fun social media, blah, 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 blah. And I don't think she realized until about a week or two into the job that she was talking about the stuff that I was doing.
Right.
And so not that I'm the sole reason, obviously she knew some people out here too. And then that she got the job offer, but that was like she was like, oh, this is cool. This is why I want to work on this brand. So we meet there, and then about a month or so in, I was like, yeah, I'm actually about to leave. And so I felt really bad because I was like, I had this whole thing my whole life, like, don't date coworkers, don't date people that you work with. It doesn't make
Gets messy.
good business, etc. And I was pretty good with this because I left in April. She came out in February and we didn't date until I left. So I felt like I did a good job of like sticking to what I thought was right.
Right.
But I would say a lot of the reasons why we connected, we just like similar things. And I think our like initial conversations, which I guess was on my end, I was very like, I've only had like one or two girlfriends before this. So I really just, I don't know, like I'm kind of like, I don't want to say picky, but I'm also, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be serious and blah, blah, blah. So we kind of had those conversations up front. We talked about like what we were looking for in life, some of our aspirations. I realized like she was super dope. Like she had worked with the NFL Network. She worked on some stuff for Netflix. Like she can graphic design. She speaks Spanish. Like all these really cool things that I'm like, yeah, I'm like, all right, like go crazy. I'm over here like, I do social media, and I like music, sports, games. I'm just like, what? Why am I so lame? And like, she's been abroad. Like, I think within the first 6 months, maybe it was even sooner of me knowing her. I think it was 4 months. She went on a solo backpacking trip in China and like hiked the Great Wall. And I'm like, here I am, here I am, just this domestic, like United States-based human being that I've been around all these countries, but I've never done anything, So I realized, and then one of the other things I think is, it's really cool to learn more about a person, at least for me, to learn more about the person when you date them. I feel like I've done that always the opposite way, where I've like just known everything about a person off rip. And I feel like, not that like you get tired or you get bored, but you're just like, oh, what else is there for me to know now? Whereas like when we started talking, I was like, I know nothing about you. I've never even been to the state of Utah. So it was like so much room for discovery. Or like, cause she's West Coast, she'd never really been to Chicago. She'd been once, but like, I was like, oh, there's so much to do. There's so many different things there. Like you'll like all the food, like all these things. And so I feel like that was something that really contributed to why we just connected so much. But then, our story of actually moving in together is funny because I had a lease that was ending, but I needed 2 weeks before I could actually move into my new apartment. And so I was going to stay with one of my friends who I had met when I first moved to Kansas City. And I was like, I just met you like 4 months ago. So I don't expect you to be like, yeah, I'm going to stay. Like, I already knew that. I was like, I get it. And she told me how much she didn't like people in her space. And I was like, I agree. Like, I was a only child until I was like 9. So like when that next sibling came along, I was like, hey, bro, what you doing here? Like, this is my space. So anyway, she let me stay with her because she felt bad that I was going to be staying with this guy. So that was like our first dose of like living together.
Yeah.
And then I moved into my spot, which was my studio. And then about 3 or 4 months later, it's like her lease was going to be up. And it was like, well, you always are over here anyway. So I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life because that's your life, your money, and which one to do. So then she's like, no, it doesn't make sense for me to live when I literally have a drawer at your house. And I was like, there you go. So we lived in the studio together, then lived in our next apartment together. We realized we just needed more space because the studio was really small for 2 people. Yeah. And then, it just was like, do you financially wise, like we're on like a lot of the same wavelengths when it comes to these things. So it's like, all right, it's a smarter decision for us to move into a house anyway, because we're going to actually pay towards something. When we move out of here, we can sell it. Like I have to check with our HOA, but I think we could eventually like make it a nice Airbnb or something if we decide to move somewhere else. So it really was one of those things where it was like, let's set ourselves up. And you always hear people talking about investing and real estate and all this. And so it was kind of like, well, we don't necessarily know a ton about it, but this could be an attempt at doing it. And so a lot of it obviously is the right person, good fit, just talked about a lot of the stuff ahead of time. Obviously I love her, she loves me, but it really was just like, we were on so many of the same wavelengths that when it came to this stuff, it was like, oh yeah, that's a no brainer. Or like, I joke with her all the time. I'm like, we're not getting a damn green velvet couch in our living room.
They're cute.
For some reason. No.
Are they?
That is, I will die on a hill that is a woman's favorite color for a couch. And I thought it was just me being a man, being like, why do you love it? But I also have a thing for like having a recliner, or at least an ability to lounge in your living room.
Okay.
And she's like, no, we don't need that. So we met in the middle. We have a nice couch. It's not velvet green. It does have recliners, but they're not always reclined, right? So that's where I think you're talking about finding the person is like, if you can sit there and, you know, talk about things, debate about things. And honestly, and it sounds, a lot of people are like, you're lying. I'm like, no, I'm not. But she's like, y'all don't argue. I was like, I think the last time we got into a legitimate argument was when she was trying to give me directions in Utah. And I was like, how do you not know? You literally are from here. I'm not from here. So it's like, yeah, if you genuinely have a good time, you enjoy each other's presence. And I think more than anything, if you can survive a pandemic, you'll be straight. Because after this pandemic, I was like, I knew a lot of people in relationships and they're not. So I'm like, you know what? I think we did well.
That's good. It sounds like both you and Chloe are super well-rounded and like do so many different things, and whether it be work-wise or together. And we're just going to tap in with a few quick hitters for you to get to know you a little bit better outside of your work. So just going to have to ask you a few questions here and there. Just give us the first couple of things that come to mind, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But it's hard to believe that 2021 is pretty much halfway over, more than halfway over. So what are a couple of things you're looking forward to for the rest of the year, or a couple of things you want to accomplish before the year is over?
Yeah. First, I think would be to sustain our business to the end of the year. Off to a great start, something that we didn't anticipate. So really rejigger that and make sure that's going to be good, because people love it, and I want to make sure everyone can get it. I'm looking forward to this vacation next month. We planned this trip back in January. It's going to be me and basically 3 of my close friends from high school. And they were all in relationships at the time. That's down to 1 couple, but they've been going for like 8 years strong. So we're all going to go together still and have a good time, because you don't necessarily have to be a couple to go on vacation. So looking forward to that. And depending on what happens with this variant that's out here, because of some irresponsible people, there is a festival that we have tickets to, but if they have to postpone it, I'm not going to be sad about it. I'll be sad, but I won't be mad at them. But Day in Vegas, which we went to the first one in 2019, we got the VIP tickets this year just because we wanted to just be more chill. And not
is this
like
the one that Kendrick headlines?
I believe so. Yeah, he's one of the 3 people. I think it's Kendrick, Travis, and I want to say Tyler's the other one. But that's the thing, like, side note, I went to Rolling Loud twice, so I've seen like almost every artist I could ever name, especially in the hip hop space. But I like the vibes. The West Coast people are just much more chill than those people in Miami, but we all knew that because Florida versus California, like we've seen it throughout 2020. So, Thanks. But yeah, those are probably the three big things I'm looking forward to.
Very cool. Your birthday's coming up, so you are a Leo. Birthday August 19th. Yep. I think I saw.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are your birthday plans, if you have any?
So that's also a fun thing that Chloe and I kind of do. It's probably started, I guess, maybe like the first year we started dating. We kind of like planned for each other. So I really don't know what's planned, but I'm sure it's going to be something dope because she really hits it out of the park every time. And then I think what's nice about that is, you know how people like kind of get in their head about, oh, I'm going here, doing this, doing that. And if it doesn't turn out the way, like they kind of get disappointed. Yeah. I think what's really nice is like, she just picks it and I'm always like, oh shoot, I didn't know what to expect anyway. So this was cool. And so like last year during the pandemic, we went to, it's a small little spot here. And I think there was only like 8 people in there. And so we had our little table and they served us. And, you know, we just had a nice fancy little dinner and just kicked it. But like, that's really cool considering it was a global pandemic, right? Like I was like, I don't know what I wanted to do because I want to go travel and do whatever, but I'm also like, no, let's not. But if we didn't have that vacation so soon, because the vacation is actually a week after my birthday, so I'm kind of counting that as part of my vacation or my birthday. But yeah, I'm not sure what we're gonna do, but I'm sure it's gonna be something fun. I'll probably post about it.
Okay, awesome. Couples take notes.
Yes.
And you mentioned a few times that you're a big sports fan. All right, a few questions: favorite sport, favorite team, and like any favorite athletes that you have.
So basketball, the Lakers, and Kobe Bryant. So
okay, so we're the same person. Cool, perfect.
Yeah. 2020 made me different, man. I was actually asleep, and it's one of those things where people talk about you remember where you are when something happens, and like I'm like 9/11, low key, I don't remember, but I'm sure I was in school. And I think Michael Jackson, I remember because I was at a basketball tournament in high school, but like I was asleep and I woke up to all these text messages because a lot of my friends know like that was one of my favorite players, like someone that I never got to meet, which this is crazy. Someone I never got to meet but touched me so like deeply that I just like couldn't put it into words. I was like, you're lying. Like I spent like 4 hours in just like disbelief. Like it's got to be fake. It's got to be a misreport. Like TMZ be lying. And then just to find out it was real, like I was like, man. But I do think, by them winning the championship in 2020 that year, it made me feel a little bit more wholehearted. But yeah, I was hurt, man, because I loved the Lakers ever since I was young. I think there's a picture of me somewhere that my dad probably took. I'm like probably 4 or 5 with the number 8 top and bottom, like matching suit. And I'm like in California. And it's just crazy because I was like, I've never met this person, but I was like, so like, I felt so close to them. So, touch with them, have like his books, jerseys, just all this stuff. But yeah, that's definitely my favorite sport. Next would come football. And then in football, I don't have a favorite team. I just watch whoever. But yeah, definitely Kobe. And yeah.
Yeah, I feel you on that Kobe story. I'm like the same way. So I got more texts when Kobe passed and I do on my birthday. Like I was legit just like in my bed, like you said, exactly, because it's Sunday. And I was in my bed watching TV. One of my best friends called me, didn't believe it was real. And then next thing you know, I'm just getting texts that like second after second after second. I'm like, I don't feel like talking to any of you all right now. I just want to watch. I just want to watch TV to see when they're gonna say it's fake. So I feel you.
Yeah, I just sat there in disbelief, and then even like, I don't know, like for hours. To your point, I'm just like, this is not a thing, but this is a thing. You start seeing all these people like reminiscing, and then you're going back, and you're like, oh, because I got to go to. I went on his farewell tour. I went up to Chicago because that's the only place I could get tickets. And I was like, man, I was there. I watched that last game from start to finish on TV. Like, you start running back all these memories, like, damn, this was my life. But I feel you.
Oh, I don't even want to go to my next question. But Stephen, okay, so you also mentioned that you're really big into music. So give us the latest or the like newest artist from your list of favorites.
I don't know if this is going to be a problematic answer or not, but I really do rock with Doja Cat. I don't know why, but she kind of be hitting. And then a lot of people had beef with him too, but I wouldn't say new artists, but Lil Nas X, I don't necessarily love, like, I like what he's doing for the industry because I think he's challenging a lot of things. And also he's a big troll. A lot of people just get so offended. But as someone who works in social, I clearly see all that. Yeah. But one of my favorite artists who I like continuously listen to is Brent Faiyaz. I feel like that if I could put like my vibe at most times, I would say it's like him because I'm pretty chill. I'm not too crazy about stuff, but I feel like if I put that music on, actually Chloe jokes about it because she's like, I remember you would play it all the time when you would get ready, like some of his old stuff. And she's like, it made me want to listen to him because I'm like, damn, he really likes this artist. But yeah, and part of my job, which this is a good question because I feel like I have to know what's popular or what people think is popular. And so I always spend my time, like I probably listen to all the new stuff that comes out. So I'm probably behind because I just have been busy this past week. But like when Tyler the Creator came out or Doja Cat came out, like I'm listening to the whole album and then people are like, what'd you think about this song? Or what was this? Or like when J. Cole came out, like I'm trying to figure out, is it hot or not? Like, and I have an internal like feeling or clock about what I liked and necessarily didn't like, but I also have to like see what are people saying. So that's where we talked about this earlier, take my personal side out of it. Cause I'm like, was that album really good? I'm like, it was fine, but y'all haven't had new music in a year. So you're freaking out about it. Okay. I get it. But yeah. So yeah, but I would say that's kind of what I've been listening to recently. I definitely have had what song was that? Oh, I listened to the Roddy Ricch a lot. I've had that on repeat because it was hidden. And then another one that came out was Raindrops with Flo Milli and Gold Link. I don't know if you heard that, but
I'm hip on that one.
Oh, I didn't know there was new Roddy Ricch out at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, new as in it came out like probably in the last 3 weeks, so that's new for me
That's still
because
new. Yeah, definitely.
yeah, I've been behind. Let me look at the actual date. It came out on June 4th, so it's about a month old, but it was still pretty good. You have to check it out.
Okay, no, definitely.
And you mentioned gaming as well. I used to be a big gamer in high school, but now I don't even have a game system. But I want to get back into it low key. So, like, what are
Yeah.
some games you're playing? And are you an Xbox or a PlayStation guy? Because everyone's really, really on one side or the other. So I got to know.
So I currently an Xbox person, but I did have a PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2. My dad got me the Xbox. There was a game, I don't know if you remember, but Halo
Yeah.
came out. And it really changed how gaming happened and like who gamed. I was like a 13, 14-year-old. My stepdad is a firefighter, but he would invite me to these little gaming tournaments back in the day where you had to be in person to do it.
Thanks.
And I'm the youngest person in here just like whooping all these old dudes' asses because like they're all like 25, which is not old at all. Now that I look, I'm like, that's me. But they're like 25 plus. Some of them are like in their 40s. And I'm like, bro, like, why are y'all playing games still? But fast forward, and I feel you on not having a console. Actually, this is probably why I did so good in school at Mizzou, my junior and senior year. So that new console that came out, and I couldn't afford it. So out of all my friends, I was the only person without the new console. And it's not like now where you can cross generation play with people, you know, which is really cool. I appreciate that. But it also makes feeling like having that new console, it doesn't feel as exclusive anymore. It's like, oh, everybody can play together, even though I got the new, like it's just weird. But yeah, so that's kind of where I didn't have a console. And actually one of my good friends that I'm going on vacation with in August, he sent me an Xbox for my birthday, my last semester at Mizzou, like the Xbox One. And I was like,
oh, you have some
like,
good friends.
lying. Like, I don't do Facebook Lives. I don't do FaceTimes. Honestly, before the pandemic, I really didn't like doing video calls and stuff, but I've kind of gotten used to it now. But I went on Facebook Live because he asked me to, and I opened that box. I was like, this man sent me an Xbox, a custom control, all this stuff. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely dedicated to Xbox now. Yeah. But I have the new console, the new Xbox, and I actually wanted to get the PS5 too, but I just can't get it because I want to play that Spider-Man game. It looks amazing. Obviously, there's more, but yeah. And I'm actually thinking maybe once 2020 or 2021 slows down a little bit, October, I might start building a gaming PC because I was doing some streaming a little bit ago, but then I stopped just because we were doing a bunch of stuff, and I was like, I got to set the camera up, got to have the stream on, got to talk to people. Like, I already do this all day without the camera. I was like, it's too much. So I was like, I'm just going to chill and play games. But what I play now, I play a lot of Battle Royale games, which is, you know, I hate to say it, but I started with Fortnite and then kind of graduated on. Yeah. Or not graduated, moved on to different stuff. The game I play a lot is called Apex Legends. It's made by EA. They're the same people. It's actually made by Respawn, but EA is the bigger company that owns Respawn, and they make like Madden and a lot of other games, but that's the biggest one that everyone knows. But that's the game I play a lot. I also have been playing, there's a dodgeball game that they make too called Knockout City. It's actually really fun. I didn't think, conceptually, I was like, how do you make virtual dodgeball fun? Like, it just sounds hard. But they did a really good job, and I actually like it a lot. I was playing some Madden 2K. I still play sports games. But I really haven't played a lot. Oh, actually, this is a fun one. I played it with Chloe, but it's called It Takes Two, right? So it literally is a game, and the premise is horrible. I think it's terrible, but it's basically about these two parents that like want to split. It's super weird how they start it, but they get shrunk down into like these not even public, like stuffed animals, basically. And everything you do throughout the game, it's a co-op game, like. You know, if I'm on a seesaw, like I get on this side and you get on that side, or like I have a certain tool to do the things on this side, but then you have the certain tool to do them on your side. But then everything that you're doing in the game literally like has to be done collaboratively. So it's definitely like you have to play with two people, but it's a fun game because you're just working together, doing everything. And you like find out who has a certain strength, who has a certain weakness. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. I kind of had a big Call of Duty phase, but I fell out of it. That's what a lot of people still do, and it's fine. It's just not for me anymore. Um, but yeah, that's what I do. And I probably, if I wasn't super busy, I'd probably play like an hour or so every other day, sometimes more, just because it's like one of those things where it's not just me getting on the game to play. I also, like I said, a lot of my friends who I play with, or I get on, I talk to them. They're really like, it's not even about the game. Sometimes it is just like connecting and just talking, because like that's how we set up the trip, because we were all just home one day, and I was like, let's go, let's have a vacation. Like none of us had did anything, and that's when we planned our trip to go that we're going to take next month.
I love it. Okay. And we have appreciated you taking your time to talk with us today. It's been great to learn more about like just what you do, and I've learned more about just what a job looks like in your field. And so we do want to wrap with two more questions. So for people who are listening, can you run off like some of your socials, the KC Max site? I know you have a photography company, so if you can run off how they can find you.
Yeah. So the easiest way is on Instagram. It's Mr. spelled out MISTER _ Stephen Austin. I don't really use Facebook, but if you want, I believe it's Stephen E. Austin over there. And then my website is Stephen Emil Austin. So Stephen EMIL Austin.com. And I'm on Twitter too, but I'm not funny as a person on Twitter, was what I've learned at least. It's Mr. not spelled out MR _ Stephen Austin. There's a character limit on Twitter. You can only have 20.
Yeah.
Once they let that character limit, I'm going crazy though. I'm being the most consistent person across the board. But then if you would like to just watch kind of our business journey grow between me and Dwight, that's Casey Mack & Co. And we're only on Instagram and Facebook. We initially were only going to do Instagram only, but Facebook is a mean big brother and makes you have an account to run ads. So that's why that's there. And yeah, I do take photos. I actually just did an engagement photo shoot not too long ago. That's kind of like my side, I don't say like passion or like hobby. Steven's DSLR. So that's because the camera I shoot on is a DSLR. So a lot of people didn't know that, which is like just a random fun thing to do. But I've done live events. Concerts are my favorite, especially when someone I like or I listen to their music, because you're just kind of vibing, getting good photos. And then I think when you're vibing, the artist kind of notices and they do different things that kind of they probably would have done regardless, but they just kind of go with you and you get some awesome content. And yeah, that's how you can connect with me. On average, I'm running like 5 accounts, but usually it's like 3. So yeah, I talk to myself a lot or talk to different people through the same version of me through many different places, but those are the spots.
Awesome.
Cool. And then just the last question we like to ask people, what advice would you give to someone who wants to embark on a path of either entrepreneurship or just wants to find something career-wise that they're passionate in?
I think part of the question is where my advice would come from. It takes a long time to really learn what you're passionate about or what you may love. And some people know sooner than later. If you had asked me, maybe when I first graduated college, did I think I would be doing what I'm doing or where I'm at? I'd probably say no, because I wasn't really a big vision person, right? Like, I never sat down. They always like, what are you going to do in 5, 10 years? I always thought that question was terrible. And I still think to a certain extent, it's not an amazing question, but I think what you can do is set loose goals for yourself, right? Like there's this joke that my dad has when I was, I don't know, maybe in high school, maybe younger. I told him like, I wanted to own or be able to fly on a private jet by the time I was 35. I don't know why this was something I wanted to do. It just seemed cool. And I don't want to say every time he gets a chance, he brings that up. But he's like, all right, you got like 8, 9 more years. I'm like, dang, bro, chill out. Like, I'm just now progressing. But what little things like that eventually allow you to kind of set plans for what you want to do for yourself. Because before the pandemic, I was like, oh, shoot, I want to go back to school. I want to go to the University of Texas, Austin. I want to go into the film program and do that, for 3 years so I can go into the film industry and change my career path. But, you know, things don't work out. And I think that's also why, you know, my best advice for that is set your sights on something, but don't get lost if it doesn't go the way you thought it was going to go. Because I still have that ambition to do that, but I'm finding other ways to do other things in the meantime. While, you know, I tell people I still have to pay the bills, right? So I got to do something that's going to pay the bills, but I can also explore. And you brought it up, Tia, but like I can take engagement photos, or like I'm actually the same couple of their engagement photos. I'm doing their wedding, and she has a brand that she wants me to take photos for, right? So it's like you can still get experience in doing the thing that you may actually have a passion for by doing something that wasn't like, I never thought I was like, I'm going to be a social media person, because I didn't know it existed. I didn't know what it was. And two, like, it's the most millennial thing ever. Like, it's the weirdest but most fun job to have. And I think sometimes people may not know things exist, which is why I try to be, when anyone reaches out to me about working, or if I have time or wants to learn more about it, I'm like, yeah, I'm always down to talk, because my path was super unconventional and I wouldn't be here if I did everything they told me to do, I wouldn't be here. And so I guess that's another one. Like, do the right things, but you don't have to do everything the way that it's said it's meant to be done. But yeah, I hope that if you're thinking about doing something or you're wanting to pursue something, at least research it, try it out. If it doesn't work out, as long as you're not putting yourself in some crazy bad predicament, the worst that can happen is you tried and it didn't work out. It's like the worst, you know, you ask and someone says no. You ask if I want to do this, I say no. Okay, now you ask someone else, right? Like, that's perfectly fine. But of course I say yes because I wanted to do this. Like, this is so cool. And I was really honored, because why me? But here we are.
Well, like you said, you got to trust the process, keep going for what you're going for, and everyone has their own path. And Stephen, we really enjoy hearing about your path, hearing about your journey, hearing about the music you listen to, and hearing about, you know, Chloe and everything like that. So really appreciate the time for you taking out of your schedule. I know you say you're busy, got some contracts to read tonight. So really appreciate it. And that's another episode of the Invited Podcast in the book. That's a wrap, and really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you all. And anytime I'm in Dallas, I'm going to hit you up now, because last time I came down there, I didn't really know who to hit up. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to stop by, say what's up.
Definitely. Awesome. All right. Thanks. Have a great night, Stephen.
Thanks. You too. Take it easy.